we're focusing on achieving multiple goals with this funding. We want to increase the number of zero-emission vehicles, or ZEVs, on California's roadways, as well as increase access to these technologies for low-income consumers and disadvantaged communities. Increasing ZEV deployment is necessary to meet our long-term climate objectives and attain state and federal health-based air quality standards. First-come, first-served projects such as the Clean Vehicle Rebate Project, or CVRP, and the Hybrid and Zero Emission Voucher Incentive Program, or HVIP, serve to increase early commercial deployment of advanced technology vehicles. These projects are complemented by 4 light-duty pilots, as well as truck and bus pilots, which are specifically designed to increase access for low-income consumers and the use of these clean vehicles in and near disadvantaged communities. Our overall commitment is that at least 50% of our $200 million will directly benefit disadvantaged communities. For CVRP and HVIP, we've spent about $88 million. $35 million, or about 40%, is benefiting disadvantaged communities by going to vehicles registered or domiciled in a zip code containing or adjacent to a disadvantaged community census tract. About 8% has gone to rebates and vouchers for vehicles registered or domiciled in disadvantaged census tracts. The projects remaining to be awarded, the pilots and demonstrations, will require that 100% of funding benefit disadvantaged communities, ensuring that we'll exceed our goal when all the funding has been expended. With regard to the second question, we need significant emission reductions from both the heavy-duty sector, trucks and buses, and the light-duty sector, cars. The metrics that we use in allocating funding between these two include expected demand for funding, a technology's readiness to be demonstrated or deployed, a technology's scalability, and transferability to other sources, its emissions contribution, and its expected role in meeting long-term climate change and air quality goals. To assess greenhouse gas reductions, we compare the funded vehicle's emissions on a well-to-wheels basis to the emissions of a conventional gasoline car or diesel truck or bus. Emission reductions per state dollar spent tend to be greater for light-duty vehicles because these technologies are further along the commercialization pathway, but accelerating technology development and deployment in the heavy-duty sector is equally important to meeting the state's air quality and climate goals. Third, in terms of where the funds are expended, we expect these funds to provide benefits across the state. CVRP has provided rebates in 57 of California's 58 counties. The majority of the rebates have gone to the state's most urbanized areas in the Los Angeles, Bay Area, and San Diego regions, which are more naturally suited for early ZEV adoption. Truck incentive funding has been more uniformly distributed. And our freight demonstration should tend to be located in regions with high freight activity. The annual report on expenditures of auction proceeds includes maps in figures 6 and 7, identifying where CVRP and HVIP rebates and vouchers issued to date have gone. We'll not have a geographic distribution of funding for the remaining projects until the awards are made, but we'll include this information in future annual reports. That concludes my testimony.
All right, thank you very much. That's our transportation and sustainable communities. Are there any questions? Senator Nielsen is not here. Senator Pavley.
On the sustainable communities, one, the money's going out the door to the MPOs, Strategic Growth Council, then will carefully audit to make sure their intended projects are meeting all the requirements.
Yes, they are.
Is it your role, I guess, is my question.
Well, the relationship with the MPOs is very important. They are certainly partners in this endeavor. They have screened those concept applications that I mentioned to affirm that they are consistent with their sustainable community strategies. We would not accept a project that was not.
I know they have to admit that to their COGS.
And we have also invited the metropolitan planning organizations to work with us in the final evaluation of these 54 proposals that are in the final stage of competition.
I guess I'm more concerned about making sure that legally and technically they are complying with the GHG reduction, and there's oversight on what they're
Yes.
doing. Because I've spoken to many of them, and there's a lot of interest, built-up interest and need for affordable housing, and wanting to make sure that we can carefully craft this to make sure that the GHG component
Certainly.
and record keeping is done correctly.
Of course, our implementing agency for the housing portion, the Department of Housing and Community Development, has well-developed standard practices for assuring development compliance. I know your question goes beyond that, but the beginning of the answer is that if the facilities are built in a manner that's consistent with the design that we've approved, then we look towards the scientific literature that has led us to estimate the benefit at that project, and we are reasonably assured that meeting the construction requirements, meeting the design requirements, building the facility that was supposed to be built will result in the reductions that are estimated through modeling.
I had one final question, if I may. I've always been curious. I support the concept of sustainable communities, obviously, and transit-oriented developments and finding ways to get people out of their cars. But on the affordable housing themselves, their structures, are there any requirements, or could there be some opportunities here to make sure that these affordable units are sustainable in and of themselves? For example, implementation of water conservation or energy efficiency measures within those units. Therefore, they on themselves are a sustainable community, as well as the transit component to it. And if not, why not? Is it costs? What is the problem there?
I really appreciate that question, because it's something we talked about very early in our design phase, something we see as highly desirable. Given the time frame in which we had to come to market, so to speak, with this program, the coordination with the Energy Commission and other programs that work with weatherization and water use reduction at the Department of Water Resources, we simply did not have time to do it. It is very high on our priority list for year two.
Going forward in the next round of expenditures, is that something the Strategic Growth Council will be looking at then?
We will, indeed.
Because that's, to me, a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
In people in affordable housing saving money on their utility bills and water bills.
It's a win-win situation.
Yes, it is. And it allows affordable housing to stand by itself as a sustainable community and potential other applications other than just transit-oriented development.
That will remain very high on our list.
Okay.
All right, just a reminder, we will do the High-Speed Rail Authority separately at the end of our agenda. And Senator Nielsen, I believe you had some questions about this area. Yes, of course.
Sir, it's kind of building on the SB 375 model here, isn't that where you're headed?
Yes, right.
And particularly in terms of the housing, how will it be defined what low-income housing is, or a disadvantaged community? What are your standards, particularly in terms of low-income housing? Was there an economic income threshold, or?
Yes, that's right. It's a percentage of regional median income that defines housing that's affordable. As you know, right now, the median price home in many of our communities is not available to the median income earner. And so we have this dislocation of need for labor in concentrated places, but the labor simply cannot live in those locations. It's part of our transportation problem. And so
I'm well familiar with the Napa Valley for
that's a good example.
farm worker housing. That's always been tough.
And so the goal is to remove some of those barriers to occupation, to residential entry, for lower than median income families, whether they're 40% below, 60% below. At different levels, we have defined deeper levels of affordability.
Now, part of your plan long-term then, obviously the criteria of infill and all of those things and what kind of materials in the building and the square footage, et cetera. That all then being the case, is there an intention to come back and after these communities are established and settled in 2 or 5 years and see if all of this worked or not? Or are we just going to assume it works? Because I'm sort of hearing here there's going to be some assumptions, but, well, we just can't assume. We need to have real hard data as we go ahead. Are you looking at long-term quantification and evaluation?
Absolutely, and this is something that has been a very important part of my career over the years. Has been monitoring transportation facilities and traveler choice. And the state of California has repeatedly conducted very large-scale surveys that are highly accurate in terms of travel behavior. So we will look towards those in a pre- and post environment to see whether we're really seeing the changes that we believe will happen based on the scientific literature. I think at the last household travel survey we did, we surveyed 60,000 California households. When I think about the political opinion surveys, sometimes they'll say a representative sampling of 1,500, and here's what Californians think. Well, we have 60,000 and think we have a pretty good base for making judgments on what people are doing.
Thank you for your response.
All right, thank you all. Stick around if you're part of the High-Speed Rail Authority discussion. Let's move now to energy efficiency, and thank you very much. Energy efficiency and clean energy programs. I'd like the Community Services Development Department and DGS, Department of General Services, to come on down.
This is a lot easier to quantify. They actually know what they're doing here.
My goodness. Welcome. All right, let's first hear from the Community Services Development Department, and we're talking about weatherization upgrades, low energy efficiency.
Yes, Jason
Things.
Oh, sorry.
Welcome.
Thank you. Jason Wimbley, Chief Deputy Director, Department of Community Services and Development. So thank you for the opportunity to brief the committee on the Department of Community Services and Development's planned use of greenhouse gas reduction funding to achieve greenhouse gas emission reductions by implementing the low-income weatherization program to improve the energy efficiency of low-income residential housing within disadvantaged communities. CSD administers a federal low-income home energy assistance program and weatherization assistance program, and we intend to leverage the administrative structures of our existing weatherization programs to provide effective oversight and further leverage a federal program to extend the use and impact of greenhouse gas reduction funds in disadvantaged communities. Now, I'll shift my attention to the two questions posed in the agenda. The first one, what is the geographic distribution of the project that have been awarded? Our program includes the installation of weatherization, solar water heating, and solar photovoltaic measures on low-income homes in the disadvantaged communities as identified in the Cal Enviro screen. CSD intends to distribute funds to local administrators covering all disadvantaged communities census tracts. This includes allocating funds to existing local program administrators to deliver weatherization and solar water heating services, and the addition of new administrators to manage the responsibilities of delivering solar photovoltaic and large multifamily weatherization services. CSD's program implementation is progressing well, with the full implementation of solar photovoltaic services occurring mid-April, single-family weatherization and solar water heating scheduled for May 2015, and large multifamily weatherization services scheduled for this fall. The second question, should the program be expanded beyond existing service providers in order to serve more people in the state? In analyzing the low-income population and residential housing demographics of disadvantaged community census tracts, focusing on households that are at or below 200% of the federal poverty level, CSD estimates serving approximately 5% of the eligible population. Not only did the analysis indicate an abundance of unmet need, but the analysis helped to assess the capacity of the existing service delivery system in providing the full range of weatherization and renewable solar projects. This assessment identified capacity limitations in the project areas of large multifamily weatherization activities and solar photovoltaic. We are currently building capacity by working with new administrating entities within these areas. That concludes my brief, and I can answer any questions you may have.
All right, we'll go through the DGS and the Energy Commission issues, and then there'll be questions. Well, who's on?
Yes, it's on. Okay. Good morning, Chair and Senators. I'm Marcia Smith with the Energy Commission's Efficiency Division. I manage the Local Assistance and Financing Office, which includes the Energy Conservation Assistance Act, or ECA loan programs. The newest ECA loan program funded through cap and trade auction proceeds is the ECA Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, or ECA GGRF loan program. The GGRF loan program, specifically authorized in Public Resources Code Section 25416H, provides loans for energy efficiency and renewable energy projects in buildings owned and operated by a state agency or entity, including without limitation the University of California and the California State University. The program funds 1% interest rate loans up to $5 million to eligible applicants for energy efficiency and renewable energy generation projects to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Utilizing the ECA revolving loan program format, which has been successful since 1979, the Energy Commission posted the loan program opportunity notice on March 17th to solicit loan applications for the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund program to implement energy projects to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. $20 million is appropriated from the current fiscal year to the Energy Commission for this program. To date, we have received one application, which we're happy to see after less than a month of posting. That came from the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, primarily for a lighting project. We have also been in touch with Department of General Services, who expects to submit an application next week for a state building located in a disadvantaged community and also providing services to the community, and that is in the downtown LA area. I wanted to also respond to, I think I've covered the first question, but wanted to give you a response to the second two questions also.
This is about non-state public buildings.
Correct.
City halls and others.
Correct. Non-state public buildings such as city halls or local water agencies compete for the funding. With the current statute, non-state public entities such as cities or counties, local special districts are not eligible for cap and trade funding. These entities are eligible for ECA loans funded through other sources. If the Public Resources Code section were amended to include a larger list of eligible entities, cap and trade funds could be used for other public buildings in addition to state buildings, CSUs, and UCs.
Do you have an opinion about that?
We've been running the ECA loan program, which does include cities, counties, special districts, since 1979. We've always had...
That's what they've done, like traffic signalization. Cities have accessed those
Right,
funds.
Exactly. Projects, I have a list here, just
There's
some sample types of projects: lighting systems, heating and ventilation, air conditioning equipment.
Have there been more applications than grants issued?
These are loans, not grants.
I mean,
so they
then-
are
then loans
repaid,
issued.
and then we revolve the funds for future loans. But we do currently have a wait list for the city and counties program.
Okay. All right.
The third question related to the response to the solicitation, which I spoke to, that we already have interest in an application in-house. If the legislature were to expand the category of funding to include public infrastructure beyond buildings, how would the Energy Commission need to amend the regulations and the solicitation? So the current solicitation was just released. In order to fund public infrastructure projects with cap and trade funds, a program other than the ECA loan program would be necessary. And this is because the ECA statute and regulations and program are designed for loan repayment based on energy savings. And the large infrastructure projects most likely would not be able to meet that criteria and could not generate the amount of energy savings to qualify for loans. So they wouldn't be eligible under an ECA loan, and we would need to design a new program, which would likely require new regulations or statutory authority.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Did you want to add anything?
He's here as my technical expert.
Well, we have these two programs that we're looking at. Before we move to the natural resources section, any questions of the panel, of the two departments?
May I ask one question?
Senator Pavlik?
Yeah, the ECO program quite well.
They do.
May need to
Yeah.
be changed to some extent because there's a pent-up demand. Is there also a pent-up demand for weatherization on existing housing stock for lower income? It seems like such a smart investment of dollars, weatherization. I mean, you do that first before you think of solar panels and things like that. Make sure your house or apartment is the most energy efficient, has all the practical energy efficient measures already installed.
Right. To date, I am not aware that we've done any public housing.
Okay.
I'm not sure legally where that fits into the statute. So weatherization is a measure that could.
But you do low-income individuals, single-family homes, is that?
Not through the ECA loan program.
Not to the
It's for
ECO, but in your cap and trade auction revenue, are you doing that?
No, these are, the cap and trade is strictly for the ECA program. The loan program is strictly for state-owned buildings, CSUs, and UCs.
Okay. Has there been any discussion of trying to coordinate energy efficiency and weatherization to water conservation?
I think those are maybe questions for the department. So,
Okay.
So the first question, yes, we're exploring we understand that the nexus between energy and water, and we're attempting to look at ways that we could emphasize water conservation under our program. At the moment, we're we do a limited number of water conserving measures, as well as we're going to bolster our energy education to include water conservation. And then also we're going to continue to explore other measures that we can install that where we can quantify the GHG impacts associated with water conservation or savings.
Okay, thank you. Further questions? All right, thank you very much. Appreciate that. All right, we'll move to the last group of departments before we go to the high-speed rail hearing. Natural resources and waste reduction. I'd like to see Fish and Wildlife, Forestry and Fire Protection, Resources Recycling and Recovery, and Food and Ag. We may need more chairs, but maybe not. All right. All right, do we have first the Department of Fish and Wildlife? Director Bonham, are you on? All right.
Thank you, Chair, members. Nice to see you again so soon.
Yes, welcome.
I'd like to take a few minutes and answer the 3 questions in the agenda posed for our department on page 19.
Great.
But I want to start with just a broad general thank you to the California Environmental Protection Agency and the Air Resources Board. There's a lot of work underway. Our department has a small part of this broader picture, but still an important one. And as you know, in last year's discussion, our department received $25 million for running a competitive grant-making program. And we will push about $21.5 million of that out through a local assistance program. And that funding will be used in 3 landscapes: our Mountain Meadow landscape, our kind of Central Valley, your district kind of Delta wetland landscape, and then coastal estuary landscapes. And this is because primarily the literature is very robust. Wetlands are among the most efficient sequesters of atmospheric carbon, bar none. And that's because they have generally high levels of net primary productivity and low decomposition rates. And we have seen this already through work done in the Delta. For example, we have particular pilot projects that have been underway for a while where we've taken highly degraded peats and restored them to functioning wetlands, and that has turned around and produced a reduction benefit between 9 and 34 metric tons per acre per year. Okay, so your first question was, how was the solicitation department pursued, structured so that non-state entities could compete? My answer is it was structured well for that purpose. So here's the summary of what we've done since July 1 of last year.
Well, the sergeant will take care of us. Okay. She says.
We received.
Door opening.
Yeah.
Why? Never mind. I'm sorry, Director Bonham.
That's quite all right.
Please go on. Please continue.
We received 27 proposals in total through this competitive grant-making program. 2 came in late. We had 9 in the coastal landscape, 2 in the Delta, and 16 in the mountain meadow landscape. Then we ran all of those 27 through at least 4 levels of review. The first level of review was a basic administrative review, pass-fail. The late proposals fail, others weren't eligible, examples like that, which produced a group of 19, which we took then those 19 through additional review. We had a technical review component where we had internal department scientists. Then we had an expert independent peer review process that also provided advice. And I'll note there that it was anonymous. It was consistent with our experience doing peer review in our field. It was confidential. We ran it through the project review office at the University of California, Davis, to help us select anonymous technical experts. They themselves reviewed measures such as carbon sequestration, carbon flux measurement modeling, biochemistry, restoration techniques, so on and so forth in their screening. Then we did an engineering review. So we had our own in-house engineers review the technical designs that were in any proposal. We had a selection panel review, and then a final slate is at my desk, the director. All along that way, we had Air Board involvement, both in our beginning program development, then in our public workshops, then commenting on our draft solicitation, and then also one Air Board staff looking in our peer review process as well. So the outgrowth of all that is we, of the 19, had 11 nonprofit, non-governmental organizations as potential applicants, 6 state entities, and 2 federal entities. So the structure for us produced more non-state entities than state entities. That's consistent with our grant-making experience anyway. We've been running grants since the 80s through fisheries programs, and on an annual cycle, we tend to get far more non-state entities than we do state entities. Second question, I'll take the first part of it. You know, I'm paraphrasing. How does our department intend to measure greenhouse gas reduction benefits? I think we're using 2 to 3 core approaches here. The first is our solicitation, which was pretty exhaustive and was our way to tell the public this is our expectation. So our solicitation said each proposal has to submit a model for describing the proposed reduction benefits. That model has to present calculations on how you're achieving the claimed estimates. The emission estimates must be calculated using the best available science. We actually ended up looking to the Delta Stewardship Council Delta Plan for the best description of current best available science methodology. We then required each of the proposals to demonstrate the reductions would be additional. This is the additionality element, that the claimed reductions would achieve the predicted amounts and that they would be permanent, so they would be enduring. Typically, we might monitor a project for 2 or 3 years. This is a monitoring commitment we intend to require out into the decades. All proposals, we also said in the solicitation, must describe the method to measure and record the reductions, and that the reductions, there won't be reversals of the benefits over time. So that said, I think we're using our solicitation and then that exhaustive kind of peer review process to ensure we're picking the right projects to begin with. Our second major thrust here will be monitoring. Just generally in the world of restoration grant making, I've found we don't do well establishing at the beginning what our monitoring structure is. We're changing that here. And we will also push the monitoring responsibility to the grantee. This is then my third strategy on best managing this. For any entity we award funds to, we enter into a contract with. I expect these contracts will have very concise, precise, and enforceable monitoring responsibilities relative to all these criteria we've used to rank and then select the highest quality projects. And failure to achieve contract conditions can result in termination of contract. So your third question was estate conservancies and were they eligible? Yes, without a doubt. Did any apply? Yes. We had 3 proposals from conservancies of those 19, or of those 27. 2 conservancies submitted those 3, so one of them submitted 2 proposals.
In the 3 areas or?
Estuary and
Mountain?
Delta.
All right.
I would, let me check, but I don't think we got, for example, Sierra Nevada Conservancy in the meadow landscape, but let me check on that.